Hi, class. This is now week 12, and again, we're getting closer and closer to being done with the summer. I just want to again reiterate how much I appreciate the openness and honesty you guys are using in your discussion boards. I really like to see the vulnerability, and it may not seem like something that you feel like you're being vulnerable about, but it is nice to see how you guys are sharing from some of your personal experience. And I think often we can learn from our experience. I think we as therapists do that a lot. But it's nice to see that you guys can relate to each other in some of these ways. Hopefully, some of this information that you're learning won't only be helpful for your clients, but will also be helpful for your personal life, because all of us will eventually either become an aging adult or know an aging adult, and how that affects our lives and those around us. So again, I want to just thank you guys so much for just the openness. It's nice to read it and just kind of see where you guys are at and what you're learning. It's encouraging. Also, you guys are doing a fantastic job on your treatment presentations. I really have appreciated looking at and seeing your outside resources. Some of what you may be seeing in someone else's presentation, if you look at the references, you may be able to use some of that, or it might be helpful for your brochure. If it's a topic that you really like, you might be able to save it for future reference for future clients. So again, you guys are doing a great job. I just wanted to encourage you in that way. Today we're going through the treatment planner again, so that's why you get to stare at my face for the next 15 minutes. The first topic is interpersonal disputes, and I mean, how often does this happen? This is a common occurrence, whether the person is an aging person, or the person is of a middle age or a child or whatever. There's sometimes we're gonna have conflict. So again, as you're aging, there might be some things that come up. So you might have frequent disputes with your spouse. Maybe someone has finally retired, and now they're home more often, and they don't know what to do with themselves. We have a family friend that she retired, or her husband retired, and she said, we were about ready to get a divorce if I didn't build him a workshop in the back. And sure enough, I mean, granted, these people could afford it, but granted, they went and she had a workshop built for her husband just to get him out of her space. Not to say she didn't love her spouse, but too much time on his hands was just driving her nuts, and he was used to being the boss. So he's saying that now that he was home, he could just boss her around all day. So that sounds maybe kind of silly or juvenile, but these kinds of things happen for people. They're used to having 40-hour-a-week jobs or whatever, and then whether it be an illness, or they decide to retire because they've been planning to retire. Now there's all this time. So conflicts may happen more frequently, maybe even conflicts with children if there's still children living in the home. Things like that can happen. Now, sometimes at this point in life, people divorce. So then you're dealing with interpersonal conflicts with dealing with a divorce at an older age. Maybe this is the time when the spouse finally feels like, I can leave. The kids are really out of the house. I'm done. Like, I'm over this. So that could be a whole set of can of worms that can be opened at this point in a person's life. So, the key thing as a therapist, you want to know the problem and figure out how to deal with it. This might be a psychoeducational opportunity to really deal with how to teach how to use conflict resolution. Some people have had interpersonal conflicts their whole entire life and never learned how to resolve it appropriately. So this may be the first time in their life they're learning about how to handle conflict. So that might be some of what comes into your office. Teaching things like active listening, teaching things about fair fighting. Again, they seem very simplistic, but can be huge for a person who's never actually had to deal with things, or their method of dealing with things is avoiding them or sweeping them under the rug. So again, it's important to find out how conflict is relevant to them. Again, there's a lot here in the treatment planner of different ideas. Ask the client to think about ways he or she might have handled the situation, how they could handle the situation better. I think the key role of a therapist in this kind of a situation is to be objective and think, how do you think that other person feels? Like to allow your client to be in somebody else's shoes. Oftentimes when we are angry, we don't think maybe about how somebody else may feel, and I think that's quite pivotal in having unhealthy conflict resolution is like, although I didn't intend to offend someone, I did. So I need to be sorry for that, although it wasn't my intention. And, again, some different disorders that might arise from this is anxiety, depression, adjustment, like I said, adjusting to a life change, whether it be an illness, a retirement, like you moved houses, whatever it may be, financial changes. It can cause stress and then cause arguments. Moving right along, the next topic that we are going to talk about is life role transition, and these kind of play into each other because we can have conflict due to life role transition. So sometimes people, and we've heard this over and over and over again, have a hard time adapting to aging. And so these might be a lot of the things that you may discuss. Also, adapting to the loss of a loved one. That's never easy. Grief and loss is difficult, and especially if it's a person who's never handled dealing with hard feelings. So that could be something that is discussed. Again, as a therapist, trying to figure out what the concern is, making sure that everybody's been medically evaluated, that they've seen a doctor recently, if they're adjusting to maybe a loss of even physical things, like all of a sudden their eyesight's gone or their hearing has changed, or even if they don't even realize that they have a hearing problem. Sometimes married couples will get in arguments with one another, and the one spouse has a hearing issue, and so he honestly wasn't ignoring the spouse, he really couldn't hear her. It was more than just selective listening. And so that can be life-changing for someone if they finally address the need that they have, not realizing it was even there. Encourage the client to ventilate feelings. This is a safe place. I always reiterate that to clients. But maybe even with this population, like, you're not about to try to call their wife or call their kids. This is the place for them to vent and hopefully feel better. So making it a safe place for them and an open place to talk about things is good. We can think of all the major transitions in life. I think there's transition all the time. And they say, like, some of the major stressors in life are, having a kid, moving, changing jobs, losing a loved one, and planning a wedding. I think that was one of them. Now, as a person's aging, you might lose a loved one, you might change a job, you may buy a house, things of that nature, sell your house. And so these kinds of things cause stress. And when you're older and maybe it's taking a little longer to process things, or you never learned how to process things altogether, it might cause you to have a hard time adapting. So as a therapist, our role would be to try to help this person to adapt to whatever this transition is, and maybe give them effective coping skills to learn how to adapt to future changes, because life always throws us changes, and we have to learn how to be more than just flexible, but fluid through it. And what I mean by fluid is we just move right through it, and sometimes there's things to address along the way, but it won't stop us. And so if we're able to teach someone how to be fluid, then we're hopefully going to help them with their future. Loneliness and interpersonal deficits. Some people really don't have anyone, and that's really, really sad. I think of that often, and how fortunate it is to have a support network. So if someone is going through that, trying to get them connected to outside resources would be good, whether it be a senior citizen center, a church, some sort of club that they can be part in if they really like to volunteer. But getting them connected and feeling a value and a worth from another outside source would be helpful. Why are they so lonely, or are they feeling depressed? Really assessing for depression, suicide, anything of that nature. I mean, some people, like, if they never married, never have children, and everyone else around them has passed away, like, who do they have? So really trying to see, like, who are their outside resources. Maybe are they not talking to family because of conflict, or are they not engaging with people that are there, and they're just, they're so down that they don't even reach out. They're waiting for people to reach out to them, and that's not happening. So maybe trying to address some of those things. Sometimes they don't have the financial resources to get out there, so trying to find them resources to get out there to connect with others, like Dial-A-Ride, or different activities that might be free, or at a low cost that would fit within their budget. I think sometimes that's even isolating for people if their budget is so tight that they feel like they can't do anything. Or, sometimes I think for an aging adult, there's a fear that money's going to run out, so they're so worried about spending their money that they isolate themselves. So being aware of that. And again, some very typical issues that can come of this are, social phobia, adjustment disorder, anxiety disorder, major depression, dysthymic disorder, very common things, but I think they all kind of correlate with one another. And then again, lastly, mania and hypomania. So mania is, it's like you're gregarious, you're out there, and then hypomania would be the polar opposite. So someone with mania may shop a lot, not need to sleep, really be out there, be loud, outgoing, and then, maybe even act impulsively, whereas someone with hypomania is going to be down, depressed, potentially, maybe sleeping often. Again, just the exact opposite. And this is where, something like this is going on, we may need to address other things. Obviously, medical evaluation would be important. It's not normal for someone to go long periods of time without sleeping, or if the behavior is high risk, that needs to be addressed. Maybe even to see if that's something that's been a lifelong problem, because there may be something that's been misdiagnosed in them, which is really important. I mean, if they have a diagnosis that needs to be addressed, then we need to make sure that they're getting the proper help that they need. Also too, like depending on the medications that they're on, there could be a medication that's causing something of this nature. So a medical evaluation would be pivotal in this type of situation. You always want to rule out medical. So having the person assessed to make sure there's not something going on that we're not aware of. This person could maybe be misdiagnosed with bipolar, in the sense of like it wasn't diagnosed their whole life, and now all of a sudden it's becoming more prevalent, maybe because the person has more time, or finally they aren't afraid to address it any longer. We want to get this person the right kind of help. So making sure, like we suggest a psychiatrist, things of that nature is really, really important. Because if someone's in a manic state, they could do very impulsive things that wouldn't be good. So maybe trying to get them to monitor their impulses. Maybe you can maybe bring in outside network to just kind of see, like, has this always been an issue? Has it not? What are your thoughts on it? Just kind of getting some feedback. And then, of course, giving them coping skills and helping them figure out how to handle these situations, what to do, educate them on maybe what's going on, because they may feel very abnormal too. Like it's not normal for them to go from extreme highs to extreme lows. And they don't understand what's going on with them physically. So you might be able to explain some things to them. And maybe helping them maybe work through some conflicts or interpersonal problems that have developed because of this behavior. Again, different phases in life, or and even in different, I think it's very different now than how it was maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago with what people think of psychotherapy. And so some things may have really not been detected because of the stigma that psychotherapy had, whereas now counseling is way more culturally accepted. And so again, someone could have had something like bipolar disorder and really just have been not treated for their whole life. So it's important that we aren't afraid to kind of address things, even if a person is older and it seems like it's a little late to address this. Like if it's causing them impairment in their life, it needs to be addressed. And I think especially with the aging population, we need to make sure we rule out any other causes as well. Because again, if something is going on with them that is medical, we need to make sure that medical thing is being addressed. So that's some information on those treatments, specifically to the book and specifically to those topics. Some people did their topic on these things, so I encourage you to take a look at some of their presentations. And I just hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Talk to you later.